Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. And this is, we're going to learn now the Maimer of Padah B'Shalom of Yutes Kislev Tavshim Mem Hey from exactly 40 years ago. And it's important to note that this Maimer is what's called a Hemshech, a continuum of the Maimer that we did last week of a Chol Manayich, which is a Maimer of the Rebbe's wedding. And of course, the 19th of Kislev comes in proximity to the 14th of Kislev. The 14th of Kislev is the Rebbe and the Rebbetzins' anniversary. The 19th of Kislev being the anniversary of the liberation of the Alter Rebbe from prison, and it's called Rosh Hashanah LaChasidus. It is the day that we rededicate ourselves and gain and glean inspiration and strength in all matters and aspects of learning Chassidus and living the life of Chassidus in all aspects of our Yiddishkeit. So, in the year of Tavshim Mem Hey, 40 years ago, the Rebbe actually said 3 Memorim in this season and this time. So the first one was on Shabbos, which was the Rebbe's anniversary, and that's the Maimer we did last time, V'chol Banayich. And in that Maimer, interestingly enough, the Rebbe mentions Padah B'Shalom, which we're going to talk about momentarily. And then in the Maimer Padah B'Shalom, the Rebbe actually mentions the V'chol Banayich. And then the Rebbe says a third Maimer of V'chol Banayich, which was then on Shabbos, the 21st of Kislev. And then we'll get to the Chanukah Memorim too, which Chanukah is of course coming up. So let's begin with this Maimer. And each Maimer is of course a stand-alone Maimer too. But they come in as a continuum because each one is also built on what the previous one is. Padah B'Shalom Nafshi Mikrov Liki B'Rabim Hayu Imadi. Many of the Mamorim of Yutes Kislev begin with this verse, because historically we know that the Alter Rebbe, when he was reciting this verse in the Tehillim in Psalms chapter 55, and he writes in the letter that when I was saying this verse, I was actually released. So the verse says that I was redeemed, and my soul was redeemed in peace from battle, because multitudes were with me, because many were with me. I want to point out one more thing, excuse me. You can find a newer version of this Maimer. I'm using the version that's in his Vaduyas. There is a little bit more, when I say a newer version, it's just a little bit of the order and the terms are a little bit different. It's been re-released in the book called Menachem Sefer Moram Moyadim, but it's of course the same Maimer. The content is all the same, and many of the verses are the same, but for the purpose of getting up the PDF, so we're using this version, and it's of course the same Maimer. Okay. After all that housekeeping, Padah B'Shalom Nafshi Mikrov Liki B'Rabim Hayu Imadi. V'Amar Azal B'Reish Mesechtas Brachas Ksiv Padah B'Shalom Nafshi Mikrov Liki B'Gomer. The Gemara says that the verse says that my soul was redeemed in peace from battle, etc. Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, says, Kol Eisuk B'Teira V'Gimil Chsadim V'Mispal L'Matzibur Ma'ili Ne'alov Kilu B'Da'ani Li L'Vonim V'Beina Umas Ha'elam. So, the Holy One, blessed be He, says, whoever occupies themselves with Torah and with benevolence and prays with the group, the Tzibur, the quorum, the minyan, I consider it as if he has redeemed me and my children from amongst the nations of the world. If you do, and we know that there is a lesson that's learned specifically from this Gemara, and the Rebbe talk about it. The Rebbe's talk about it in the Chassidic discourses. Mahu inyan hanasinis tam shapadah v'shalom nafshi. When you look at this verse, it says that my soul was redeemed in peace, but then it's, why was it redeemed in peace? Because many were with me. So what's this whole idea of this giving the reason and how it happened? The chihu loshen shel nesinas tam. So it says, because, and the verse says, ki, because, so it means it's giving a reason. So what is this idea that because that many were with me, and that's the reason that I was redeemed? We also have to understand in that passage of our rabbis in the Talmud and Brachas, why, when we say these three primary things, the first one that we quote, that it says, is Torah. In other words, why does Torah take precedence over prayer and or benevolence? We see specifically that Torah is first. So what's the reason for this? If all three of them are important, so what is this order? Where does this precedence come from? So as the Rebbe explained in the Mamorim, that this is the idea, and here the Rebbe brings the verse of the previous Maimer. It says in Isaiah 53, and all your children are the learned of God, and much peace to your children. And our rabbis of blessed memory have expounded on this in the end of the tractate of Brachas. And just parenthetically, the Discourse was a day that the Shas was always finished. Everyone divided up the Shas, the whole Talmud. So Brachas is the first tractate. The Oid Mesechtes, and there are three other tractates that end with this specific ending. As a matter of fact, the word Bonayich, which we're expounding on and talking about here, is an acronym for the four tractates of Brachas, Nazir, Yevamis, and Krisis. They all end with this passage. Talmidei Chachamim, so this is what it says. Talmidei Chachamim, sages, wise sages of the Torah, who study Torah, Marbim Shalom Ba'olam, they increase peace in the world. Because it says this verse in Isaiah, and all of your children, Banayach, your sons and children, are those that learn the wisdom of God. V'rav shleim banoich, and the much peace is unto your children. Al trike bonayich ela boinoich. You don't have to read this as your children, bonayich ela boinoich. And this is, we mentioned this when we learned the Maimer previously. We also say this Maimer Chazal towards the end of davening every day in Nusach Sfard, Nuschari, and others say it on Shabbos and Yontif. Now, so don't read it as your children, but your builders. Meaning that by studying Torah, you're building the world. The word boinoich with a vav means those that build you. So the Shalom explains this Gemara saying, where did you learn this from? Because it says bonoich, the tevus bonoich miyuter. The second time that it says in the verse, your children, that's superfluous. It's redundant because we already said it earlier. We know already who you're talking about. Therefore, I should have just said, and they have much peace, referring to them. You don't have to say again, and much peace is to the children. So, the reason why the verse includes the second time the word bonayich was to teach us this lesson that the bonayich also means boinayich, those that build you, that Torah study will build you up. The boinayich, those that build you, mean they occupy themselves with building the world. Shem Talmidei Chachamim, the sages of the Torah, the wise ones. Kiddush of Gemara, like the Gemara tells us in Tractate Shabbos, or this is Zohar, like the Zohar tells us, the God, it says, looked in the Torah and He created the world. So the Torah is like the blueprint of the world. And the human beings, when we look and we study Torah with diligence, we fulfill and we maintain the world. That's why they increase peace in the world. Because they are the sages that study and occupy themselves with Torah. The mere fact that they're studying Torah, that increases peace in the world. Because the Torah, its ways are the ways of peace and pleasantness, and all of its paths are peace. Okay, like that's of course the verse in Proverbs. Look at Psak or Rambam, and like Maimonides' rules, Me'asifri, his source of the ruling is in the Medrash. The Torah was given to make peace in the world. There should be peace in the world. To the ultimate of peace. Now the Rebbe is going to ask a question. We have to understand the explanation of the Shalah, that the reason why Banayich was even said in the verse, and that's what he's explaining the Chazal, the verse of the sages, was so that we're able to learn this. So the Rebbe says, well, even without that extra word, you could just say the mere fact that it says that they bring the peace. We'll know why they bring the peace, because of their Torah study, which we spoke about earlier. That even if we already read that all of your children are those that study, and then they bring peace, we'll know that it's study that brings about the peace. Torah learning. So that's a reference. Those that study. It's a reference to the sages and those that study. And they increase peace in the world. So why do you have to have the word a second time? We could learn this whole lesson by just the association of Torah study and peace. I'll know that it's Torah study that brings the peace. You don't have to say that this is the building by using the word the second time, bonayich and boinayich. V'yadrab, on the contrary, lefi ha'mashmos b'pasuk, hine im hoyakos of Rav Shlomo. The Rebbe says even more, that if it would just say and all of your children are the ones that study, and this study would be, their peace. This is their peace, meaning peaceful, P-E-A-C-E. It's their peace, P-I-E-C-E too. It's their piece of their part in making the world. But their, I have to. But you would have the direct association without the redundancy of saying the name. So it would actually drive pretty well that it says even without the extra term. So Adrab, Lefim Mashmos, Posuk Hini, Im Hoyakosov, Verav Shloimim, Hainu Da, Dekoi, Al Kol B'nech, Mudei Hashem, Hini Oz, Koi, Al Kol Echad V'echad Yisrael. And it would be more than that. The Rebbe would say, let's say somebody wasn't as diligent in Torah study. This would be a reference to each and every Jew, because everyone really is connected to the Torah. And here you got to take out the yellow highlight markers, where the Rebbe says here, like we say in the Menachem, that it's an extra energy and strength that it gives us, and the Rebbe says it in 90% explicitly, each and every individual Israelite. Kol Banayich. It says all of your children. It says all of your children are the ones that study Torah. So sometimes it's ones who are already studying, sometimes it's ones more with potential. But this is what increases peace. Everybody, every Israelite has a part in the Torah. As a matter of fact, not only does everybody have a part in Torah, everybody owns the whole Torah. Like it says, it was a very famous verse that Moses commanded to us the Torah, and it's a heritage for the congregation of Jacob. The Torah, all of it, the whole Torah. The written Torah and the oral Torah is a heritage, an inheritance for Israel, for every Israelite. When it's an inheritance, then an inheritor inherits everything. And then he can start to deal with it. But he owns everything, automatically. You don't do anything, including the liabilities and including the whatever it may be. They inherit the whole thing. Not just a part. What does this teach us? They says so it's like the Rebbe says, it's like almost two things here. One thing is those that study, and everyone studies. Everyone has a connection to Torah. Now, those who are diligent and really study a lot, Talmidei Chachamim, specifically through their occupying themselves with the building of the world through Torah, that is what increases the peace in the world. So the Rebbe says, just to understand now this whole thing and why it's in this order, and why the pasuk has this extra word to stress this even more. So the primary part of the explanation is as follows. Serving God is specifically divided into two categories: the 248 positive mitzvahs and the 365 negative mitzvahs. The 365 things that we're not allowed to do, that we're forbidden from doing, and the 248 things that we are supposed to do. The mitzvahs I say, but nevertheless, they generally also fall into three categories. In the three ideas, not just categories. They're not categories of mitzvahs, but three primary occupations: the Torah, Vedic Chasadim, Torah, and serving God, and benevolence. Those are the three pillars upon which the Torah stands, as it says in the beginning of the Pirkei Avos, the ethics of the fathers. Not just the regular world, but the small world, which is every individual. That's what we're made up of: Torah, prayer, and benevolence, good deeds. And these are the three things that it says in that previously mentioned, that whoever does these the three things of Torah and serving God and benevolence. So God says, I consider it as if He has redeemed me and my children from amongst the nations. So these are the three things, the same thing as the pillars. So, so whoever studies Torah, occupies himself in Torah, that's the pillar of Torah. And benevolence, that's the pillar of benevolence, and charity, which is generally like the whole of mitzvahs are all compared to charity. Whoever prays with the minyan, the group. That's the pillar of serving God. This is what it means, why the verse says, all of your children who are studying God's wisdom and much peace of your children. You don't have to read your children, but those that build you, because it's to stress that the whole idea of, in order to, that the beginning of the verse, that all of your children are those that study God's wisdom. That's the general whole idea of what a person has to do. And that's even part of the other two, of course. It's the avodah of the whole nation of Israel, mitzad amud hagamach, amud hatfilah, even for the pillar of benevolence and the pillar of prayer. You become those that learn God. Everything is through the Torah. It all gets channeled through Torah. Because generally speaking, like it says in the Talmud, if we wouldn't have help from God, we wouldn't be able to do it. But because we have help from God, we succeed. So, in generally speaking, the Holy One, blessed be He, helps them. And generally speaking, our part of our service to God is to be similar to God. Just like the Talmud says this, and the Talmud brings examples, just like God is merciful, you'll be merciful. And God is benevolent, you'll be benevolent, etc. And more so, through fulfilling the 248 positive mitzvahs and the 365 negative mitzvahs, we affect building the attributes of Zoh, which are which is a reference to the attributes of God, which is the reflection of His face, the Zeir Ampin, the smaller face, so to speak, of God, which is includes the attributes of kindness and severity and beauty, etc. So through our fulfilling the mitzvahs, we make up the body, so to speak, of God, and these attributes with which He creates the world and which we all connect, as the Tanya explains. And in the 19th of Kislev is the day that we actually begin the Tanya again, because we study the Tanya throughout the year, and it ends at the 18th of Kislev and it begins on the 19th of Kislev. And when it's speaking in the portion of Achrei Mos in Leviticus, it says, we're talking about the mitzvahs, it says the mitzvahs that a person will do and he will live with them. V'isa b'zoyhar v'asisem atem v'asisem oisom. I'm sorry, there's another verse. The Zohar says that when the verse says in the verse of in Kedoshim, it says, and you will do the mitzvahs, and it says you will do them oisom. So there the Zohar points out that the word oisom, which means them, referring to the mitzvahs, is written without a vav, and therefore it can be read as the word atem, you will do it. Atem kesiv maile ani aleichem ki'ilu asauni. So since it's written like that without the vav, so it means like you made me. I consider it, when you do the mitzvahs, as if you created me, as if you made me, so to speak. Through our performing of the mitzvahs, which the 248 mitzvahs are compared to the 248 limbs of the person, including the supernal person, the supernal man, meaning God, and the 365 negative mitzvahs are the sinews and the other parts. So when you perform the mitzvahs, it's as if you make the godly, the celestial body, so to speak, in a spiritual sense. Yet the sages that study Torah, they're building the world. Then you're building the world, you're bringing out that there's so much peace. They make peace in the world and they increase peace in the world. That's the idea of the building peace. Building the world of peace. And to explain it in yet some more detail. Take out those yellow highlighters again. Even though every single individual Israelite everyone is obligated in fulfilling all the Torah and its mitzvahs in all of the three ways, meaning Torah and benevolence and prayer service. That just like we're divided into more like two categories, which are referred to by the name of Yisachar and Zevulun, the two tribes of Yisachar and Zevulun. When they get the blessings, it's referred to the fact that Yisachar studied Torah, and Zevulun, these are these two children of Jacob, Zevulun went out and did business, and that's why it says Zevulun l'choif yamim. They went out with ships and they imported, and they supported their brothers of Yisachar who occupied themselves with Torah study. So this is commonly known as Yisachar Zvulun. Those that are studying and teaching a lot of Torah, and those that support Torah, that's the Zvulun. Mored Torah, Tamid HaChachamim. So those that are with Torah, the sages, and the wise, their primary aspect, or their primary work is Torah. And then there are people, the masters of good deeds. Their primary occupation is to take care, to make it happen. And they're both very important. They're both integral. That's so al derech zenechlak, but just like you have those two categories, al derech zenechlak gam can be gimel kavim. You could also divide it into three categories. Tamid chacham shekirav dasam beis katera, the sages that their primary service is occupying themselves with Torah. Ve'ela shekirav dasam gimel chsadim, and then there are those that their primary occupation is benevolence. Ve'ela shekirav dasam betfila, and then there are those that their primary occupation is prayer. Now the Rebbe says, well, if you're already making categories, first we make 2, then we make 3. So he says, well, there's really 12 tribes. So there's 12, and then there's the 70 souls that came down into Egypt, and so in a spiritual sense, we're all one of those 70 from one of those 70 souls. And even within that itself, those 70 souls include Jacob. So everyone was a descendant. All the other 69 were descendants, plus, and just to point out even more, and the 12 children of Jacob also had their own children with them, the descendants that made up. So again, they're all. It's not just 70 unique, but each one then becomes unique in their sense. So that's called a Shivim Nefesh. And then if you're going that way, the Rebbe says, Ad L'Shishim Ribu Nishamas B'Yisrael. Then there's the 600,000 general souls of Israel, which we all have a piece of one of those souls, even though there's more than 600,000 Jews. But those souls, again, get further broken down into different aspects. Shehim Neshamas Kloliya, so there's the 600,000 are called the general souls. And each one of the 600,000 also includes 600,000 pieces. So now start doing the math. There's a lot of pieces. Like the Tanya explains this. And everybody is individual, everybody goes in their path. Everybody's unique. Nevertheless, they still fall into primarily one of these 3 categories. That we could serve God. The sages, the students, the wise students, that their primary service is with Torah occupation, learning Torah. And then those that their primary occupation is with Bnei Elvilins. And those that their primary thing is prayer. So this is what this idea is, that all of your children are the learned of God, and much peace unto your children. Don't read it, children, but builders. So the first part, so the first part is talking about the people who their primary thing is prayer. And through this, they become also Limudei Hashem. But V'omram B'nayech, Boinoyech, the ones who really build you up, Koyal Tamid Chachamim, Sheikir Eskem HaBaTorah. That is a reference to the ones who study Torah, and their primary occupation is Torah. So that's what now that you see what the Rebbe is getting to, that's why it comes first, etc. Because Torah is the primary channel. V'zeh V'rav Shlem Boinoyech, the Elu Sheikir Eskem HaBaTorah, those that their primary occupation is Torah, they are specifically the ones who increase peace in the world. Even though, truth be told, all of Torah mitzvahs, their whole idea is, and their whole intent and content is to make peace in the world between the Holy One, blessed be He, and His world. But the ultimate of this, you have to go from strength to strength. That's primarily through Torah study. That's why, by the way, everyone has to study some Torah, even if the primary occupation is something else. And like the Talmud says, whoever studies Torah for the sake of Torah, Lishma, he places peace in the supernal family, so to speak, in the supernal realm and in the lower realm, in the worldly realm. That means Torah study just for the purity of the Torah study, without any other motives and motivation and any other things. For no other reason, just for the sake of Torah. Then we bring around the ultimate peace, supernally and in the supernal realm and the lower realm, and with all the explanations that one may have for what does that mean, the supernal family, the worldly family. As is expounded upon in the discourses of the one that was liberated, the Rebbe, primarily in his book Likutei Torah. וזהו, גם מה שאומר ז"ל פרעה בשלום נפשי, גמר כל עסק ותרא בגמל סכסודם וכו'. And that's why it says, the verse in the Gemara Brachas that we mentioned, that's the beginning of the Maimer, whoever studies Torah and benevolence, the Seder b'Torah gam hu Torah. An order in Torah is also part of the Torah. In other words, if something is listed first, that means it's primary. That means it takes precedence. Even if all three of them are ingredients to something else. They're all three the things that bring about the redemption of God, so to speak. But nevertheless, Torah is the first one. Umitam zeh hikdimu osinin hoisik b'Torah. That's what the Gemara mentions. Torah occupation first, Torah study. Because the primary part of peace is accomplished and affected through Torah. And even more specifically, that's what it says. It doesn't say in this verse, it doesn't say whoever studies Torah. It says whoever occupies himself with the Torah. But the word for occupies himself is asik. That it's the same word for, let's say, a business. You say, what's your asik? What? Because it's what you're really focused, hyper focused on. So, loshen asik davke. This word, like, what is your occupation? What do you do? Like it's expounded upon in the discourses of the Rebbe's father-in-law, the Rebbe, the previous Rebbe. Torah study has to be like it's your business. That's your occupation. That's what you have to take time with. And like the Bach explains when he explains the way we make the blessing before we study Torah every morning, so there he says when he's explaining the blessing, and in many of the nuschoyos we say every morning, those who that he has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to occupy ourselves, and our preoccupation should be in matters of Torah. It happens to be that in Nusach Ari we say al divrei Torah. We don't say this word la'asik, but nevertheless it's a nusach, and it illustrates how we have to do it. So even though it's different in some of the versions, some of the nuschos, including our nusach, we say al divrei Torah, but here the Rebbe and the Frierdiker Rebbe learn from the Nusach Ashkenaz and whatever other nuschos have this, that it says la'asik because it's a lesson in how we have to treat the Torah. The Rebbe spoke about this several times. How we have to have what our attitude has to be. That we're worried, that we make sure it's done. Just like business, you have to make sure you're going to make a living, etc., etc. The ein zeli would stam. It's not just learning something because you're interested or your curiosity is piqued. El limud be'efen shel asik. You're really involvement. Be'efen she'ein le menucha. Like it says, the sages don't have rest. Like the Talmud says, that the sages who study Torah specifically, in other words, doesn't say this about the others, they don't have any rest. Because they grow from strength to strength. That's the explanation of my soul was redeemed in peace specifically. The redemption is specifically with peace. The oz he betachas hashlemus, and then it's a full redemption. And then through the serving God with Torah study, and for that matter, the benevolence and serving God and davening with a minyan. All this time, we're going to come to the ultimate of the fulfillment of this verse, which is a reference, and that it refers to the days of Mashiach specifically. And like the Alter Rebbe, the one who was redeemed, alludes to this in his discourses, and it's explained and expounded upon at length in the Mamorim, the discourses of the Mittler Rebbe, his son, Rebbe Doiber, Yud Kislev, which, by the way, his own redemption was the 10th of Kislev. In proximity to the redemption of his father, the Alter Rebbe, the 19th of Kislev, that the ultimate fulfillment of the idea of redemption and peace will be specifically in the days of Mashiach. Because then we'll have the fulfillment of the promise that the earth will be full of the knowledge of God like water covers the seabed. Like the Rambam explains this, that the primary occupation of the world the whole world, all of the world, will just be to the knowledge of God alone. It won't be occupied with any other stuff. This is referring to everybody on earth, not just Jewish people, everybody. Of course, and most certainly the Israelites, the children of Israel. They'll have the fulfillment of what it says in the verse that you should know the God of your fathers, and the verse, of course, finishes there, and serve Him with a complete heart. It's a verse in Chronicles. In Chronicles 1, chapter 28. He doesn't she calls them Heda, Yemenu Mamish, and maybe the will of God that all this is going to happen speedily in our days, actually. So, with the truthful redemption through our righteous Mashiach, and then at that time they will study Torah from the mouth of Mashiach, in a way you'll be able to see, and the perception will be like sight. And the preparation and the vessel to get this. Is spreading the wellsprings of Chassidus to the most outer reaches. The Nishmasa, that's the idea of the soul of the Torah. The peace will spread out to the furthest reaches in a way of Yafutsu that'll be just spread out totally, and then they will be immediately redeemed. Like the Rambam says, the Master will come, that is the King Mashiach.